Hey, welcome back. The future of digital marketing is more exciting and uncertain than ever before. So I wanted to sit down with an expert digital marketing pro to get his take on the future of digital marketing in 2025 and beyond. With that in mind, I've chatted with Dav Nash, FATJOE's head of marketing, to get his take on the state of digital marketing in 2025, for his trends and predictions to see where the digital marketing industry is heading.
All right.
Cool. So thanks for joining me, Dav. First things first, why should people care what you're saying? What are your credentials? And just kick off with a bit about yourself.
Cheers, Dan. So I've been in marketing for over 10 years, probably about 12, 13 years now. I've worked in-house, I've worked in agencies, and I worked my way up in my SEO career, up through the ranks to team leader, and eventually started managing teams in digital agencies. So I was head of digital at quite a large media agency based in the Midlands. Since then, I have worked in-house again as head of digital. So I've been around the houses in that respect, and I've kind of become a bit more generalist these days. From having a very heavy SEO expertise, I'm kind of involved in everything now. And then more recently, became head of marketing at FATJOE. So I've been involved in multinational marketing, all the different channels, team leadership, and I think I've got a pretty good finger on the pulse now from working on the cutting edge of marketing for quite a while.
Awesome. Plenty of credentials there. If anything, overqualified, may I say. But yeah, cool. Especially with the SEO, obviously, given our audience, I think that will give a great insight across the broad spectrum of digital marketing and also SEO as well. So with that out of the way, shall we kick off with your first prediction? Sort of, we're midway through 2025 now. So what's kind of what you're seeing with the trends, where you think digital marketing's going 2025 and kind of beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think marketing in general is getting much more complicated, almost at an exponential rate, I think, more recently with the sort of advent of AI and the way that consumer behavior is changing. So my first prediction really is that authenticity is going to become super important. I mean, it already is pretty important, but moving onwards into 2025 and beyond, I think sort of brand rep is almost on the decline and personal rep is on the way up. People are trusting brands less. You're seeing this across all the social media channels, and it's almost like we're getting a bit tired of ads, and we're getting a bit tired of corporate culture. And there's a bit of a shift at the moment, almost blending the lines between B2B and B2C marketing. So what we're going to be seeing now is that influencers, user-generated content, employee advocacy is becoming more and more important, because people want to see who is behind the brand, who are the people that are the thought leaders, the decision makers, and actually moving things along in a human way. People don't want to buy from faceless brands anymore. And I think it's becoming almost individual USPs for businesses where their staff are the USP and people want to buy from the people in the business. And we're seeing that a lot more on social media. We're seeing it leading into other channels, even like TV advertising and out of home and stuff like that. So I think to really stay ahead as a business moving forwards, you're going to have to start leaning on the expertise and the human element that's within the companies that you've got. I think customer loyalty is on the decline. People used to pick a brand and say, this is a brand that I really like, I'm going to stick with it. And I actually think that with the pace of things at the moment, people are becoming a lot more picky. And actually, if a brand missteps, maybe saying something wrong publicly or something like that, then there's quite an immediate response. You're seeing it now with Elon Musk, for example. People were they're advocating for Tesla. People were all over it when Tesla first came out. It was a very trendy brand. And now just because Elon is doing stuff in the news that is potentially upsetting various people, we're now seeing that having a knock-on effect on the Tesla brand almost immediately. And the customer loyalty is just gone overnight.
Yeah.
And that's, again, comes back to authenticity and the personal rep side of things. It's the founder that caused that problem. So
Yeah,
it's something
obviously
that's
in that case, it's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it? Really, in
yeah.
that you want to be advocating for getting a real strong profile, but that maybe is one where it's ticked over a little bit too far, and the person is the brand. But
Yes.
yeah, I think they're all great points there, really, aren't they? I think we're seeing a lot of that with kind of FATJOE ourselves. We're seeing great traction from when our CEO Joe Davies, when he's doing his personal brand work, that's really bringing in a lot more interactions. Obviously, then it can be roughly the same kind of content that we were previously doing on official FATJOE channels, and yeah, it's just getting a lot more pickup because people want to engage with the person. Same for Vic, the FATJOE brand manager. She's doing stellar work with that, where it's blurring that line between kind of, in our instance, if you give your if you give your business brand a personal tone, that is a kind of a way of merging it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're seeing that again with brands like Hootsuite and Surreal, SEMrush to some extent. It's adding a sort of comedic element and a bit more human touch, and there's a bit of banter going on in comment sections, and people are responding well to the brand because it feels like there's a person behind it. So yeah, it's becoming very important. So I think that's the main takeaway from this for that sort of prediction, is the authenticity, visibility of your staff, and transparency is going to be super important moving forwards, and it's something that every brand should be considering.
Yeah, definitely working on getting those employee advocates in as well, and just it needs to be authentic, though, is the one thing I was kind of close out there with, is if it doesn't feel like it actually fits your brand voice or actually fits the space that you're in, maybe not doing kind of quirky, surreal, serial style marketing. If you sell hardware, if you sell drills,
Absolutely.
maybe not quite the one there. So just making sure, don't just copy and paste what others are doing, but bring your authentic voice in, even if maybe that is a little bit drier.
Yeah, that's 100% true. It's still got to be true to your tone of voice as a brand.
Cool. Cool. So hard agree there. What would your sort of second kind of prediction or trend kind of be?
Second one is that the messy middle is going to get messier. It's already very messy.
Okay.
But there's in my opinion, and I'm seeing it in other people as well on places like LinkedIn, and I think the general feel is that marketing attribution is dying a bit of a death at the moment. It's becoming very hard to understand what your customer touch points are, where they're hearing of your brand, where are they actually being triggered to go down a conversion funnel. There's all sorts of things that are causing problems with understanding the customer journey at the moment, such as the changes with tracking, with cookies being kind of phased out a little bit. People have often click decline on cookie banners, for example. So we're losing that kind of JavaScript tracking that we used to have. A lot of browsers have it built in. So again, they're just people in a black hole, basically. You see this on GA4, for example, where if you compare that to server-side tracking, there's a big discrepancy between the people who are showing up on the site. And then gradually, these little aspects that marketers use to track and understand performance are just being stripped away. So, like Google, for example, has got this new feature coming out where you can have burner emails attached to your Gmail. So just with a click, you can set up a temporary email. You can use that to put into like a lead magnet, or if you're signing up for something, for example. And then if you start getting spam through that email, you can just turn it off and it all goes through to your main inbox. So immediately we're going to start losing that sort of holistic customer journey, where it used to be the case that, get them off platform, get them onto your emails, and then you've got your customer and you can talk to them. And that has actually just been switched off in effect.
You can shout into a different void.
Yeah, just shouting into the void is what we're doing now.
Yeah,
we're seeing it with LLMs. So obviously a lot of search traffic is coming through places like ChatGPT and DeepSeek and all the other AIs that are about at the moment. And those are, again, there's an element of black box to this. We can kind of see the referrals that come from them, from analytics, for example, but also we don't really know exactly how they're deciding on which brands to present to customer queries. We don't really know which pages they're going to link people to, if they do link them. We haven't got any control over that at the moment, like we did with Google search to some extent.
And just to note quickly there, obviously with the referrals, even they're not perfect.
No,
there's a lot seeing that actually quite a large percentage of the traffic is being missed. So even of the traffic that you are generating, it's not always great at actually doing it in a way that is then generating the referrals that are visible in GA4 or other kind of similar tools.
Absolutely. So it's just getting harder and harder. There are some tools out there which promise sort of AI driven attribution. But again, it's a black box, and how can you trust it? So that's something that's been quite fundamental for me over the last sort of 6 months to a year, is deciding whether or not I can trust the data that's coming in. And once you start having those doubts, you can't really make decisions off the back of it. So are we heading back to a kind of 1980s style of marketing where it was just an everything everywhere approach, and a lot of it's just based on gut feel or direct customer surveys, and we just look at stuff like your marketing efficiency ratio? How much money are we sticking into marketing in any given month? How much revenue is coming out of that in any given month? Let's compare the two. Is there a trend? And it almost becomes a much fuzzier exercise, where it's based on more like gut feel than solid data. So
if you wanted to make it sound nicer than fuzzier, you might go with vibes-based marketing.
Yeah, it's vibes-based now.
Vibes-based.
Welcome to 2025, the year of vibe marketing.
That is a good point there, though. We see it in-house. We're hearing a lot of chatter around it, where it is kind of, we obviously are in the SEO space where there has always been quite a lot of, it's hard to attribute direct increases to one small change. It's more of a, if I'm making changes and there is a positive upshift, then that's it. Keep the momentum going there. But we're really having to kind of bring that to wider marketing now, aren't we, really, with kind of, as long as the changes that you're making, as long as you're seeing an overall positive increase, you maybe are going to lose some of the granularity overall. It's harder to determine that one email did particularly well, but having those emails going out along with the social presence, along with the PPC campaign that you're running, as long as together they're all generating more of an uplift and costing you less than they bring in, then that's pretty much as far as you can go with a lot of it right now.
Essentially, yeah. And it's a big shift, in the sort of early 2000s, mid 2010s, you could rely on the data. And I think it was a lot more granular and reliable back then. And I think it's really, for marketers, it's just being aware that that's changed, and that you can't rely on that anymore, because the platforms themselves haven't changed. You can still go on GA4 and you can look at your users and stuff, and unless you've got an understanding that garbage in, garbage out is happening, you're not necessarily going to understand that you can't make solid marketing decisions from that data anymore.
Who I feel sorry for here really is kind of, rather than full-bore marketing agencies where they're going to hopefully be switched on to this kind of thing, it's going to be more difficult for your in-house marketer that then has the kind of non-marketing CEO or that they're kind of having to then report to, explaining that in an age where everyone is promising that everything's getting better, my tools are getting worse. And a bit of a difficult conversation to have, but definitely a worthwhile one to be prepping both your wider kind of agency and then also obviously your direct reports, and that prepping that's kind of the direction that we're going in, really.
100%. Yeah.
Cool.
And it kind of leads into the next prediction, which is that zero-click searches are going to get worse and worse. They're going to multiply. I think this was coined by is it Search Toro? Spark Toro?
Spark Toro, Rand Fishkin.
Rand, yes.
Yes.
So zero-click, for those who aren't aware, is when you go onto a Google search and you search for something and you get your answer immediately on the search results page. So you're not necessarily clicking onto a website. For example, if you search for the age of some famous person, Google will just give it to you. You don't need to go and visit a site for that. But the downside of that, obviously, is that Google's getting that information from somewhere, and inevitably that's somebody's website, and they're not receiving that click. So there is a bit of unhappiness in the marketing community, SEO community about this, because it means that Google's essentially stealing the clicks from you and keeping you on their website. I mean, we see this across the board with places like, all the social media channels. They don't want you to leave the platform. They will push down your reach if you put a link in your post. In exactly the same way with Google. Google does not want you to leave Google. So they're putting more and more SERP features in to try and get people to stay there or go onto Google services. So like the map pack, for example, you're looking for a local business, you're going to click on the map pack and it's going to take you to Google Maps. Google's very happy about that. So this is getting worse now with AI overview.
Yep.
Which, I mean, has got a bit of a bad rep at the moment, justifiably so, because it's often incorrect. We've seen lots of pretty hilarious examples of it giving terrible advice, like, I don't know, putting rocks on your pizza and stuff like that.
Yep.
But the more sort of malicious kind of undercurrent of this is that AIO is going to be pulling from other sources on the web, inevitably company websites and blogs, packaging that information together and then serving up to users to respond to their queries, which again means that your blog or your website is not going to be getting those clicks. So it's a bit of a, I'm curious to see where this is going to end up, because obviously companies have to create blog content to make AIO work and to make LLMs work, because that's just how they get their information. But now there's going to be less motivation and impetus for companies to actually create that kind of content because it's being stolen by AIO. So
absolutely. I mean, I've seen it with my own content. So obviously creating a lot of blog content for FATJOE, and I'll see that we're being cited in an AIO, and it's fantastic, we've been picked, and then you see the clicks go straight down, because if you are in that AIO, why would the user, unless there are rare occasions where the user wants to double check, and I mean, having been someone searching these kind of queries generated in AIO, I have gone on then to sources and discovered that actually they're not saying what the AIO says at all.
Yeah,
but obviously that you would hope that some of the AIO stuff will be fixed. ChatGPT and other kind of LLMs, they're also doing exactly the same. There, where there's entire conversations happening, and they're a lot worse at citing. At least AIOs try within Google, but yeah, we are kind of seeing a lot with the AIO, with the LLMs, where they might not even have that source. It will just give you an answer, and you'll never even know that you contributed towards that. Hopefully, that great answer that the user got.
Yeah, it's a challenging situation, and I think it's hard to know where it's going to end up, because I think it's for marketers, it puts you in a really difficult position of what is our blog strategy now? What is our SEO strategy? Are we optimizing for AIO? Are we optimizing for LLMs now? Because maybe we're not optimizing for Google search anymore. Is there a difference in how you approach that? We don't really know. We're kind of in uncharted territory at the moment, and I think we will adapt inevitably. Marketers always do. But it's a bit of uncertainty that's happening at the moment, and I think it's going to be a challenging few months, couple of years, where the sort of status quo is sorted out, I suppose.
That's definitely one where we're able to obviously we're getting your trends and kind of predictions. It's a lot harder there to get a tactic out of it, whereas with kind of some of the other predictions, it's predicted, and then you're seeing the change happening, and then you can adapt your policies. With this one, it's a lot harder we're plowing on, obviously, with more of a kind of a mindset of, if there's reduced clicks, if there's reduced SERP real estate, then it's even more important that at least you're hoovering up, even if it drops off to 50%, 40%, 30%, when at least you're appearing for those kind of 30, and that's currently our approach. But that is definitely one that will be a lot harder to kind of give viewers like a takeaway on, and here's what you should do, because it's just so dependent on whether you've got the resources to be able to put into what is a diminishing tactic for now. But I would agree with you that that's definitely something that Google are going to have to take a look at some point. Otherwise, people, if we deem it not worth it, then that's our content no longer contributing, and then where do you end up if enough people would make that decision?
Yeah, the whole house of cards comes down then, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's before we even get onto the lawsuits that they're facing. I've seen some big publishers going in, but obviously that they'll rumble on. That'll still be happening in 5 years' time. So we'll try and keep it a bit more current here.
I mean, really, it's just a case of kind of keep doing what you're doing, right? Because I mean, the LLMs, AIOs, they get information from somewhere, and it's from your blogs. So ultimately, you just keep cracking on, and we'll see where it pans out. But it leads me into the next prediction: is that obviously, I mean, AI is the big one, isn't it? Right? It's here, and it's not even an elephant in the room now. It's just it's right there in the middle of the room shouting. And I think it's, as marketers, we're obviously in a very tech heavy industry, and I think most marketing professionals obviously spend a lot of time on the internet, time on social media. They follow people who are quite cutting edge with the kind of the tech that are using stuff. So I think there is an element of echo chamber at the moment, and I see this when I'm talking to people in my social groups that aren't marketers, or they aren't in tech industries, and actually half of them aren't even aware that ChatGPT exists, which surprises me, because obviously I use it every day. But if you look at that as a wider sort of like national, global level, AI is still really fresh, and a lot of people just don't really know about it, or they don't use it in the day to day. And I think we're in a kind of privileged position where a lot of marketers are on the cutting edge of that, and they understand AI and they do use it in their day to day. But it's also had such a knock-on effect already, even though the user base comparatively is very small compared to the global population. So we're right at the cusp of a kind of like a new age of AI that we think is really prevalent because we're just involved in it all the time, but actually it's just getting started. So all the things that are happening now, which are problematic for marketers, are just going to compound and compound and compound over the next few years, and it's going to get worse and worse. So, you know, I think there's going to be a shift in the way that consumers, it's almost going to be a roller coaster that comes, I think, and you can kind of see the path it's going to take. And that at the time, like now, marketers are using AI quite heavily. We're using it for productivity increases. I know I personally use it all the time, just for like proofing work or brainstorming, coming up with ideas for stuff. A lot of content is being written just directly with AI, which I don't necessarily agree with, but it's happening, and it's you know, it's here to stay. So it's something that we just have to acknowledge is happening. I mean, if you look on LinkedIn's like 9% AI talking to AI these days.
Dead internet theory getting played out in the professional setting now.
There's no humans on the internet anymore, guys. There's no point in doing marketing anymore. No. But I think what's going to happen is that gradually we're going to see more lay people taking AI into their day-to-day life and the day-to-day work outside of sort of the marketing and tech industry. So usage is going to become much heavier. We're going to start seeing that people, I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel like I can read even just a line of text. I know it's been written by AI.
Yeah,
you know, and it's even worse for a blog. Like almost every blog I visit now, I'm like, oh yeah, that was written just purely by AI, and I almost lose trust in it then.
Yeah.
So, but I think that comes with experience, and that's the experience that marketers have. You know, my mate who works at the local council probably doesn't, because they don't use it every day, and they're not tuned to that kind of thing.
I'd say it's also obviously just sort of subject expertise as well. It's one of those things where maybe you think it looks amazing when you're not in that space. So you're in a space where you're interacting with AI, but you're not in the space that you're having it write about or work about, and you think it's fantastic, and then you hand it over to someone that knows that industry, and they go, well, that's all wrong, or that's really surface level, or you know, that's based off kind of a lot of assumptions there. There's no personal experience there. That doesn't tally with what I've experienced, and that's where you can really start to pick it apart, rather than I'm not a massive believer in a lot of the tells, purely just because of the way that it's trained. It's trained to spit out grammatically correct. The business about the M dash and all that lot.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Diverging that, but as overall the impact that it's having, you've hit the nail on the head there with you then get suspicious, and it's how what is essentially good content, or at least baseline average content, perfectly average content, somehow you're now diminishing trust off the back of average content. So you're having to go even further and above and beyond to even just get what was previously, as long as it kind of did serve the job, then that was fine.
So I think off the back of that, there's going to be a few knock-on impacts. I think one is going to be that human content has a resurgence. I think there will be almost there'll be a preference for human content, and people will be able to identify AI content. And I think naturally we're going to find that all of the companies that are using AI content at the moment purely for their blogs and stuff like that will start feeling impacts that are negative. So they'll be losing users as people get more attuned to it. Google will be devaluing it, and it's already shown that it's devaluing AI content when it can identify it. There's going to be a bit of an arms race between AI getting better at writing content. So it's going to be harder to understand if it is AI or not. So there will be a little bit of sort of confusion to that aspect. But what I reckon is going to happen is that written content will become less important on the internet, and actually video content and that human, almost like unmistakably human aspect is going to become a much stronger channel for marketers. Not to say that AI can't create videos and pretend to be people as well, because it can. And maybe we will hit that point where we can't tell, perhaps, at which point all bets are off. I think at the moment there's enough uncanny valley that you can kind of tell when it's AI or not. But ultimately, AI brings nothing new to the table. It only has information that already exists. You know, it can't come up with new topics. It can't ideate things like humans can. It's just, it physically is impossible for it at the moment, just by the way that LLMs function. You know, if we get to some sort of epoch where we get like general AI intelligence and suddenly it can think like a human, then who knows where we're going to end up. But I do think we're quite a way away from that at the moment. So what's the takeaway from this really is that I think the fundamentals of marketing aren't really going to change immediately. I think content wise, it's still really important to create good content. And if you are using AI to write content, then make sure someone who actually understands the subject matter looks at it and adds their own value, and make sure that it doesn't just sound like a robot's churning stuff out. You know, make something new and use AI as the basis for it. I've got no issues at all with people using AI to structure documents and brainstorm and proofread and that kind of stuff. But I do think a human needs to be involved at some point in the process to make good content. I think we need to lean more into video content, and it goes back to the authenticity side of things where, you know, the humans are important and the founders and the staff and that kind of thing. If we can get them onto videos and social media and stuff, then it's moving people away from the AI and bringing the authenticity of humanity back. That all ties in again. So
linking really nicely there with your first point on the personalization, making sure that that's coming across obviously in your content as well as your kind of outward facing socials and stuff like that.
And SEO wise, nothing's really changed. You know, the same things that were important 10 years ago are still important now. You still need to have good content that serves user intents. You still need to have a technically sound website. You still need to have links and from authoritative sources that are relevant, or, you know, high authority ones. The actual fundamentals of SEO don't change.
EAT has gone nowhere, and if anything, it's just more emphasized just by, if everyone is spitting out that average content, then your expertise, your experience, your authority, and the brand trust that you've got are more important than ever before.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that as a concept is going to get more and more important as AI becomes more mainstream. So yeah, it's starting to see a theme here, aren't we? AI is making things complicated.
Yep.
Be human.
Yeah. Okay. So if we could get our thumbnail just kind of nailed in right now, is what we're saying is AI is going to destroy marketing.
Oh, I don't know if I want to be that. Yeah, maybe.
Okay. On that bombshell, if we go on to actually your final prediction.
So I think really it's the culmination of all of that in that you can't be average anymore.
Yeah.
There is no room to just be mediocre.
Yep.
You know, I think market saturation is the highest it's ever been across all verticals. The amount of information on the internet is insane. And it is multiplying exponentially every single day. You know, there's new people entering the space, and there's so much noise that it all blurs into one. So I think there's going to be a case where we're already seeing it, where a lot of the first movers have already built up massive advantages to the point where they're almost untouchable. You know, you see this with the big companies that you can name, you know, like Apple, Amazon, obviously, Google, all the monopolies, essentially. You know, they were first movers in their spaces, and they've just compounded into these enormous untouchable companies that have basically pushed out competition as much as they can. But it does mean that just by the very nature of capitalism, almost all the verticals are starting to see those companies emerging. They're not necessarily mainstream like Apple and stuff, but when you look at who actually owns all the companies, there's only a handful of companies that actually sat at the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's becoming harder and harder to make a mark with your business, especially new businesses, but even existing businesses, if you're small or SME or something, it's getting more challenging to make any traction. So brands are going to have to stand out.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to have to do new things. They're going to have to do innovative things, and they're going to have to find ways to connect with their audience that they haven't done before. And we're going to find that the brands that are just average and don't have much imagination and don't understand their audience and don't put the work in are going to be disappearing. And it's easy to sit here and say, just be better, just be less average. But you have to. There's no room for it anymore. You can't just, it's not, you know, it's not the 1950s where you can start a business and then it just sort of like, it just works because there's no competition and no one's about anymore. There's too many people on this planet. There's too many businesses.
Yeah. Maybe we focus on too many businesses on this planet.
There's too many people making businesses on this planet.
Yes. Yeah. And this kind of plays to, you can't be average anymore in yourself as operators, but also your business in terms of, we see a lot of interest whenever Joe Davies is doing his posts around, here's some niche agency ideas. That's a real way to differentiate yourself, obviously, to go into those niches. But even there, we're seeing a lot more competition. So it's not enough to just decide that you are the skateboarding marketer. It's not enough to decide that you're just that. You then also have to, and this is to link perfectly to everything that you've brought up, back to the personalization where if you can prove that you are the expert, that you skateboarded for 20 years and there's demonstrable proof out there, and your team are enthusiasts in your space, just to run with one example there, that's really what's going to differentiate it for the user, isn't it? And if they're in the face of going with some well-known but faceless mass marketer, some large conglomeration, or go with the small guy, that's always been the strength of an SME, your ability to kind of give the personal touch. But it really has to, it can't just be a half-assed effort of personalization. You really need to put the work in to be the guys in your space, really.
Absolutely. It's got to be real, and experience matters more than ever before now. So yeah, I think that's something that's, I mean, I put it on a LinkedIn post recently that your people are your USP, really. And I think that, especially for marketing agencies, I'm not convinced it's possible to make a full service marketing agency from the ground up right now and be able to make traction, unless you've got some sort of significant differentiator, because the market is just too busy. And the only thing really that differentiates one full service agency from another are the people behind it and the motivations and their experience.
Well, that certainly sounds like a fantastic LinkedIn post that everyone should go find.
You should go find it, like it.
Really get those engagement metrics on that particular fantastic post. But to engage with you as a person.
Yeah, as a person, exactly. I don't use AI on my
experience with FATJOE. No, that definitely a lot of agreement there. I think the one thing probably maybe not touched on, but is definitely also going to be a difficulty for marketers, that I would say, is siloing and people dropping. We noted that it's harder to kind of track people, but people simply just dropping off into spaces that we don't have a presence in, where it will be personal communities. Yeah. That's a great way of, you were saying about you're unsure of who you're talking to. Well, you can be sure if you're running a Discord server, school, as again Joe Davies already does with the school community, SKOOL, I should point out there. There'll be a lot more of that, and that's where, unfortunately, or fortunately as it happens, you have to just kind of rely on your brand rep. You have to rely on what you're doing in the outside world. Generating that brand rep, getting that knowledge, is then just essentially taken sort of by osmosis, unless you can, I don't want to use the word infiltrate, much more benign than that, but unless you can work your way into those spaces yourself, then you just have to rely that what you're doing is enough to then get you mentioned within those spaces, really. Yeah,
and the challenge is that obviously it's, some industries are going to be more appropriate for that than others, and you know, we talk about deplatforming, getting your audience off social media, getting them off Google onto your own little ecosystem, like the school and Discord servers, and you know, even like Facebook groups and stuff like that, because then you have got your little sort of gathering of ICPs that you can just sell to, because they're there and they're interested and they're engaged. But it's a really challenging thing to do unless you're putting out really good content and you've got a lot of the authenticity and experience and the stuff that we've already talked about. And yeah, it almost pulls those people off the main road, and they're sort of untouchable then by other businesses. So I think deplatforming is something that is important, and you're right to bring it up as something that's going to be important moving forwards as well. But I think we're going to see that that's more prevalent in digital verticals. I mean, you're not going to see it from like a warehousing company or something having their Discord group of warehouse enthusiasts or something like that. So yeah,
that's just a WhatsApp group asking why someone's late for their shift, really.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it is an important consideration, and I think you're right. They all tie into each other. You know, marketing's getting harder to measure.
Yep.
Businesses are being held to account like never before, and they need to start taking their audience's intellect and interests seriously, and understanding what actually do they want from a business, and how can they show that in a transparent and authentic way. AI is massive, but you know, don't be fooled. It's still kicking off. We're in an echo chamber at the moment. We think it's massive, but it's not yet. It's really getting started, and it is going to seismically change the way that people access information. So understanding how that's going to happen and getting ahead of the curve for your marketing is going to be super important. And really the main takeaway is just to level up your business and just really start taking your audiences seriously. I think now is the time for businesses to step up, stop being so corporate, start understanding the human connections that actually sell products and services, and lean into that with authenticity.
Fantastic. Well, luckily the world isn't quite falling down. The AI sky isn't falling upon us just yet, but
not yet.
There are a lot of changes there, really, aren't there? So yeah, thank you ever so much for your time here. I said it a little bit tongue-in-cheek earlier, but people can find you. You're posting a lot of this kind of stuff on LinkedIn, so that's Dav Nash. And yeah, thank you ever so much.
Thanks, Dan.
Cheers.
And there you have it. 5 digital marketing trends and predictions from a seasoned marketing pro. Where do you think digital marketing is heading in 2025 and beyond? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified when we bring out brand new helpful guides, expert interviews, and more. See you in the next vid.